Hi, very good morning to you. It's Jim from Mavstar Observatory. First of all, guys, we've got a few things to get through in this video. I think towards the end, a lot of you are going to find it interesting. We're just going to cover a few basics before that. Now, I know some of you are going to say to yourselves, well, we know everything. Well, if that's the case, then you don't need to watch the majority of this video. You can just skip right to the end, because you know at this critical point in time, what we're all at right now is the cause of the anomalies that are taking place that are now starting to have some deep impacts on most of us on this planet. I'm talking about 8 billion people, and I'm going to quickly take you around the world showing you and telling you what. But don't be so complacent, alright? Don't think you know everything, because I certainly don't know everything. But what I'm trying to do is just help those people who watch these videos, and because I get criticised sometimes for going on a little bit too much on one particular area of what's happening, they say that the information gets fogged out in a bit of ramble. But I'm not trying to do that. What I'm trying to do is give people enough information so that they don't have to come back into the comment section and ask the same questions that we get asked a lot. And another one of those comments that we get frequently is you go over it a lot all the time. It's like 90% of the stuff you talk about is the stuff you've already talked about. Well, there's no need to make up fairy tales here and give you a different story and scenario every time. But what I can do is show you that thing that is causing these changes in our world, show you how that progresses, and show you the causes as it progresses. That sounds like logic thing to do at this point in time. So with that, guys, there is a link down there if you want to help support what we're doing at this observatory. We're not just talking about these things, we're actually tracking these things as they occur, and the major causes of what we are now seeing around the world. And that is, of course, climate change. But the thing is, it's not caused for the reasons that they are saying it's caused. Now, if you've got a criminal in your area and he's frequently stealing the things out of your house and you can't catch that criminal, then he's more productive if you identify that particular criminal, as opposed to say that they're just thieves. If you know his location, you've probably got a chance of getting some of your things back. So to give a name to something is a way of you acting 10 times faster to something than not. So this is exactly what the mainstream organisations have done. They've given name to something so that they can get the actions 10 times faster to try and resolve the solution. But I think with what we see them doing with the money that they're raising, and the villain that they've identified, CO2 in this case, isn't going to resolve anything in the short term. And certainly, because it's not sorting these problems out short term, it's not going to resolve them long term. Guys, I'll go through this in a logical manner so that you can see step by step about what is going on in our world for you. And this is a massive sacrifice of my professional time that I give here. And a lot of the time, well, you see the comments, don't you? It just goes largely unappreciated with a lot of people, because this is their naive state that they're in right now. But I'll tell you now, when I start revealing some of the percentages of losses of crops, water shifting from one place of our planet to another, because we are in a biosphere, and when I mentioned the other day, I used just the term lightly, the water tables are shifting. I got criticised for that, believe it or not. But listen, if we live in a biosphere, if anyone has ever played with a biosphere, you know that the water is contained within that biosphere unless you remove it. And then we might be seeing some of those indications of water being removed out of our atmosphere through a term that NASA has described as sputtering. It's an ionization of our upper atmosphere and our water in that atmosphere, as well as a lot of the gas molecules in our atmosphere. When you leak that out of the atmosphere, you can't replace them in this particular biosphere. What we've got on our planet is what we've got, and we have to maintain that. And our planet usually does that through the biosphere. But when you get a weakened magnetosphere, that is the glass that contains the biosphere cracking and opening up. And that means that when the ion wind comes in off the sun and galactic and intergalactic radiation comes into our solar system and has contact with our upper atmosphere, it strips it away, it erodes it, and it never comes back. However, the water on our planet will still remain in the biosphere. And, if we have warming on one part of the biosphere and cooling on the other because of the jet streams that are controlling these events, then the water is going to be transported. That water table, as I lightly call it, gets moved from one part of our world to another. And what that can result in is severe drought, like we're seeing in the United States. Lake Mead is down to 28%. The crop output is down to 43% in Mexico. Texas, the ranch owners there are having to sell their cows off right now at around $100, where they used to get $800. And the reason for all these things is because they're just not getting the water to supply the lands so that they could get that cattle feed, like silage, haylage, into stocks so that they can keep them throughout the winter. In fact, it's got that bad where it comes down to crops like wheat and things like that, they can't even see the crop to its full cycle because there just isn't the water there and the crops aren't growing. They've been told in some states that they've got to have a severe restriction on the water. We're just at the moment looking at a couple of the states in America, but most of them have been affected. I encourage you to have a look at a recent satellite photo of Europe right now. One where you can see the actual colour of the land. Because, if you was an alarmist, you would look at that and say, this is desertification. It doesn't take a lot when the grass goes white like it has, and you can see it from satellite photos, that could easily turn into dirt and then into, desert. But we're seeing in some parts of our world desertification. This is all just a part and parcel of the problem, which I'm going to identify in just a few moments. What people need to do is be patient here, because we're having to unpeel back some of the lies that are being told, show you therefore what really is going on, and then give you a platform where you can monitor it so that you can see as it progresses. Now, that's somebody that does that is obviously going to be better informed than people that are, just looking at the topic very briefly, not really understanding the full implications of what's going on, and then moving on to something else. I think a lot of what we've experienced, I just want to quickly say this, over the last few years, has been nothing more than a distraction. I'm talking about the pandemic. I'm talking about the possibility of wars. These are perfect distractions as to what really is going on. And I will tell you now that what is taking place now is unprecedented in our times. This is the very same thing that stopped cultures and our ancestors that was part of these cultures thousands of years ago thriving and surviving. This is what meant these people back in them times had to do was leave that infrastructure that they'd invested so much in, building things like these pyramids, towns, agriculture at that time. When the water patterns changed, the biosphere changed on our planet, and that water got transported somewhere else. It shut down crop production, farming, and therefore the inability for people to thrive and survive in these built up artificial areas like we have today. There is no difference. Only we've made a bigger mistake than what our ancestors have made. We have bolted down our cities. You can't move a city. You can move the inhabitants, but you've got to have the logistics to do that, and we simply don't. Having said that, let's get on with some of the details now in this video. And I'm not going to apologise for going over and over this thing. I want you to understand so that you can focus on the cause, and you can help with us track what's going on with the cause and how it's changing, because of what we've seen up to this point in time has delivered this. and we've not reached equilibrium yet, then boy, are we in big trouble. So to start with, we're looking at two temperature maps, and you can see I've put a red line on both of them, both going back to 1880, and the one on the right goes back 2,000 years. I asked the question, well, if you want an opinion on what's happening in our climate, would you agree with me that we need to look back as far in the records as possible in order to get a better understanding of what goes on with our global climate? Because what we're being told right now is that from the Industrial Revolution, which they will say, if we look on the left-hand chart, began around about they show us the temperature charts from the 1900s, but if you look at our history, the Industrial Revolution began at 1760, 1780, but they won't show you the records going back to that, because it doesn't exactly show you the truth of what's going on. They would rather focus on what happened from the 1900s to 2020, and can you see why they would do that? Excuse me. It's because it's a continual line or gradient that goes right up to the top of the chart. And if you're going to say this is global warming and it's caused through CO2 being emitted by man, then this chart, looking at this little chart here, is a good example to prove your point on that. But this data has been cherry picked for that reason alone. I'm going to show you the ICPP charts in a bit, so you can get an idea of how much cherry picking has been going on. But you can see on the right hand side here, temperature over 2,000 years gives you a little bit more of an understanding of the knowledge of what has been taking place. Now, if humans from 1760, let's say, on the right hand chart now, if we look at that, if humans are responsible for emitting the CO2 which has led to global warming, which is causing the anomalies that we see today with the shift in water around our world, then who was it, if we go back 1800 years on the right hand chart, was responsible for causing the temperature rise that led up to the medieval warm period? This never gets talked about. And why is that? Because if you put these two charts next to each other, then you would have to answer that question. And of course they can't, because the Industrial Revolution never began 1,800 years ago, according to what they're saying. And it doesn't support their argument, does it? These are just two temperature charts that I can use as evidence to rebut their claims, but they have shut the debate down now around the world, and they are persecuting anybody that so much as submits these to the public domain. Why is that? We're going to get to the point in a minute. Let me show you another chart. So we're looking at a chart now which has been largely produced by the International Panel on Climate Change, or for short the IPCC, not as I described it earlier on as the ICPP. I got it wrong. But you can see the period of time that this chart covers only starts at the 1900s, and there you can see their actions that they think that should be done, and how they're going to try and tackle some of these problems. You see what I mean now? This is supposed to be the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they've cherry-picked the data right back to the 1900s. They didn't even go back to the 1760s. They went straight from the point where it continued to go up temperature and emitted everything else before that, including the medieval period. This is exactly proof 100% that they are cherry picking the data in order to produce an outcome which they can manipulate. Because if they was really interested in temperature charts, they would show you this one. And of course they're never going to show you a chart like this that goes back 450,000 years, because it reveals more closer to the truth, and then they'd have to answer the question, what really is causing the problems? Because you can see that we've had cycles of 100,000 years. It's the Milankovitch cycle. It's to do with a change in our orbit around our sun, and it happens every 100,000 years. And what happens is the temperature goes up into a glacial period, which is a warm period that we've experienced and thrived in for 12,000 years, which is changing. And it means you can see, well, you know what's coming next. We're going back into an interglacial period. Sorry, a glacial period. But you can see the temperature has gone up 4 times already in the last 450,000 years, and when it has, CO2 has risen. But when the temperature drops, guess what? CO2 follows it. And what they're saying is that the cart is pulling the horse. When you can clearly see that the first thing that goes up on any one of these spikes that you're looking at is the temperature first, not CO2. What they're trying to say is that the CO2 went up first, and that warmed the planet. You know, they don't even mention these past interglacial cycles at all. Not ever. They don't mention the medieval part. They just want to focus on the last 120 years of our climate's history. And of course, that is not how you understand climate. The bigger and larger the record, the more you have at your disposal to make those decisions on what is likely to happen next. And of course, you can tell me just by looking at the chart at the end here, at the right hand side, what's going to happen next, can't you? But before that does, we have something else that hasn't been entered onto this chart, and it's something that happened 780,000 years ago. And just maybe that could be responsible for what I'm about to show you now. But just before I do, can I just drive the last nail in the coffin on global warming being caused by CO2? Just to really drive it home. So just briefly, here is on the left hand side with the blue pie chart the amount of CO2 which is naturally put into our atmosphere and by man, and you can see that the quantity is 0.4%. And tell me something out of 100%, what is 0.4% of anything? Well, in this case, science would normally, if they wasn't on the bandwagon of doing what they're doing right now, you know, accusing CO2 of causing global warming, that what they'd normally call that is a trace gas. In the red pie chart, you can see just out of that amount of trace gas, man is actually responsible for putting into the atmosphere. So man puts out of that 0.4%, 0.012%. So the naturally occurring CO2 in our atmosphere that comes mainly from land and oceans, not mankind at all, is 99.988%. And the other bit is what we put in there, 0.012%. That's the truth. That's the final nail in this coffin, hopefully, that concludes this argument. You know, I think we'll rest the case right here and now, because we can all see that the amount of CO2 that goes into the atmosphere responsible for man could never change anything on this planet with regards to climate. There must be something else causing it. Let's have a quick look at what that might be. So to show you something which I believe is causing all these problems, I've come over to our home website, poleshiftnews.com, and I just noticed very quickly there that we were in a solar storm, and I went down to the KP index, and as you can see, it's just peaking at 5 at the moment. So you know that other anomaly that we're witnessing, where we get the upward sprite lightning going into space? You know, we could be seeing some more of that, so keep your eyes open. But what I wanted to bring you down to and show you is this chart here. And as you can see, it just gives us a quick overview of the last 3 solar cycles, and as you can see, they've been dropping off. Now the problem is with this, when we have dropping off sunspots and solar activity, it leads to a shrinkage of the heliosphere. So to start there and then, we have now more inbound cosmic radiation. You know that thing I was talking to at the beginning of the video that causes sputtering? The term NASA use for the upper atmospheric erosion taking place. Well, it's not just down to, you know, solar activity over the last 30-40 years. There's something else that's been going on for a lot longer. In fact, if we go back to the 1900s and we see what changes started taking place with certain anomalies, what we see is that the Earth began to notice one of the magnetic north poles migrating over the Northern Hemisphere. We've seen this increase a few times, and we've been paying a lot of our attention to this because I think this is most directly related to what is taking place. But just before we leave the topic of grand solar minimum, because that's where we are right now in a time like grand solar minimum, I just want to show you the actual radiation that just because of this is now inbound into our upper atmosphere, and because we have a weakening magnetosphere, which also allows sputtering to take place. And if you don't believe me on what I discuss here with regards to sputtering and upper atmospheric erosion, have a look at some of the NASA missions that are just about to start and have been running for the last couple of years, because it's to do with upper atmospheric studies of planets like Mars and Venus. And we know Mars had a magnetosphere, it lost it. We know it had an active core because its volcanic activity stopped some 500 million years ago. So, you know, when your core starts to slow down, so does that thing that creates the magnetosphere. And when that starts to slow down the magneto, you have the magnetosphere weakening. When you lose your magnetosphere, you lose your upper atmospheric primary protection. And that's game over for any living organism on that planet. So let's have a look at just the causes of these two things: grand solar minimum, low solar output, and a weakened magnetosphere directly related to a planet going through a magnetic pole reversal. So here we are quickly looking at the space environment overview 2014, and it doesn't matter that it's not current because it's got all the information that we are concerned with. It's got the last 3 solar cycles, I've numbered them at the top of the chart, but more importantly I want to draw your attention to the right hand box under 24. This is the measure of cosmic rays, and unlike any other time that we've ever witnessed, we're getting that cosmic ray count go above the line in the maximum of the cycle, because usually this is the time where the sun's heliosphere is fully inflated and it's pushing out all that radiation out of our solar system. But this is the first time that we're seeing the radiation go above the baseline. That means there is interaction in our upper atmosphere, and it is largely due to the low solar cycle output in terms of, you know, sunspots and activity, and also our weakened magnetosphere. Now I want to show you what happens to a planet that has a weakened magnetosphere during a time of a low solar output. So here is a flow chart I've put together for you, so we can just have a look at some of the things that's going on. We can see at the top there on the left, grand solar minimum means low sunspots, just for simplicity's sake, which leads to a weakened heliosphere, and this leads to an increase in cosmic rays in the upper atmosphere. Then we've got below that a magnetic pole reversal, which leads to a weakened magnetosphere, which leads to an increase in cosmic rays in the Earth's upper atmosphere. Now, when we get these cosmic rays mixed with the upper atmospheric particles, that allows water vapour to condense on the forming water and make water forming droplets in our upper atmosphere. Water droplets enter the jet streams of our planet, those that shift the water around in the biosphere, like I was talking about earlier, and it leads to an increase in the mass and the velocity of the jet stream, in turn changing the behaviour, i.e. the polar jet streams mixing with subtropical jet streams, which I'm about to show you, and this leads to abnormal jet streams and global changes in the climate. This is where your jet streams should be on your planet. To start with, we have a jet stream, the polar jet stream at 60 degrees north, then coming down just slightly a little bit at 30 degrees we have the subtropical jet stream. These are jet streams that contain two different things. One contains very cold air, the other one contains very warm air. When they collide together, you have, you know, events such as downpours in minutes, or you could have, you know, heaps of snow delivered in more northerly latitudes. It just depends on what's in that jet stream at that particular point and which direction it's moving in as to where it will deliver it. But the main thing to understand is that both over the northern southern hemisphere of our Earth and the southern hemispheres of our Earth is that these two jet streams have come together many occasions over the last 30 years, and it is in the last 30 years that we've seen the majority of the weather patterns on our Earth changing. And this is because, as I showed you in the previous flow chart, we have extra cosmic rays coming through our upper atmosphere, and it's causing seeding platforms, which leads to super jet streams like we're looking at. And these are jet streams that easily fragment and detach and mix with subtropical and polar, both over the northern and southern hemispheres. I'll just very briefly talk about a new anomaly that's taking place that's been commonly more noticed now. Over the equatorial region of our planet, we are having subtropical and subtropical jet streams mix now straight across the equatorial region. So I'll show you now how your jet stream looks today. So we're having a quick look at the jet streams today on the 20th of the 8th 2022. It's around 7:30 in the morning, or 0700 hours or thereabouts. And you can see what I was exactly talking about, the interchange between the polar subtropical jet streams over the northern and southern hemisphere. I'm just going to take you a little bit around the world, and as I do, you can see the equatorial interchange between the subtropical regions of our planet. This is a newish anomaly that we've recently seen over the last 5 years, which is becoming more common. As you can see, this is the state of our planet today. Just want to give you a quick look over the northern hemisphere directly. The video will probably be out of sync with the audio, but you'll get what I'm talking about. So over the northern hemisphere, then we're going to go over the southern hemisphere, have a quick look at that. So we can see what's going on there, but pretty much what I discussed would be the case, is the case with regards to what is currently taking place in our Earth. Now, this has largely involved 10 years research, and it's very difficult to compress into just a 30-minute video and pack enough information in there so that people can get a rough idea, just a rough idea of what actually is taking place with our planet. But I think I did a reasonable job today, and I just hope that I'm helping people understand what is really going on with our planet, and more to do with the reasons that are actually causing that. It has involved a lot of investment over the years of time and money, and not just my money, but a lot of people that support our observatory. I'm just hoping that a few more people jump on board with the little bit more of an effort that I've put in today to try and clarify what is going on. And like I said, if you at the beginning of the video skip to this point because you know it all already, then you know the only thing you need to do now is follow the source of the cause of these problems. And that is exactly what we cover, and the equipment that we have dedicated to monitoring on this planet, and that is the progressive magnetic pole migration and the study of the grand solar minimum at its current level. And of course we have a third anomaly, which I only briefly talked about, and that was the return to another glacial period. We are on course for this Earth to start going a bit cooler, and we might even be seeing those changes take place. Right now you can go on to Pole Shift News and have a look at the sea ice extent, and you'll see that we've put on the size of Europe back in the northern hemisphere, but of course we're not seeing that on the mainstream. They're just showing us the pictures of Lake Mead being at 28% levels, and other rivers showing signs of drought. Guys, there is a link down there if you want to help support us. I certainly hope you do, because it does require time. And right now, think about this: 8 billion souls on this planet, all being led in the wrong direction. Nothing good is going to come out of that situation. We need to do more. You take care of your loved ones. As always, I'll say what I usually do. Bye for now.